Welcome to the Get Trauma Informed podcast, dedicated to unraveling the complexities of trauma, its pervasive impact, and the journey towards holistic recovery and realignment. If your radiance has ever felt muted, like I and thousands of others, you're in the right place to reignite your inner light. I'm your host, Wellness Coach Liz Blanding, and this is the Get Trauma Informed podcast. Hi, and welcome to part 2 of our mini series within the mini trauma recovery talks. On part number 1, we talked about functioning traumatized. We talked about what it looks like to master smiling faces and what does that mean. We talked a little bit about what does it mean to go along to get along. What does that really look like in real life? We also touched on signs and symptoms of functioning with unresolved trauma. Part of our movement here is to bring awareness to trauma and bring awareness to how many people, according to the CDC, 70 to 80% of our population suffer from trauma, with 7 to 8% now going into PTSD or complex PTSD. So it kind of bears the reason that we have quite a few people that have either been touched by trauma, affected by trauma, or someone that has gone through it and are looking for. Some people may not even know how the trauma affected them. If you go back to some of our episodes, we talk about how it affects the brain, how it physically affects your brain. Your brain shrinks, right, to protect itself, or it opens up when you've put those self-care techniques or modalities into place, and it helps you to relax. It helps you to breathe. And now your brain says we're no longer in any type of what am I trying to say here? Any type of a situation where it's cause for fear or fight, flight, or freeze, right? We're no longer in danger is what I was trying to say. We're no longer in danger. So now we can open up and blossom again, right? And that's a wonderful parable to be balled up, or like your brain becoming smaller to now it opening up. Is how life can be when we up and out with the trauma. And I say up and out because that means bring it up and throw it away, get rid of the trauma, right? So today on part 2 of functioning traumatized, we're going to talk about the impact of silent suffering. We're going to talk about why people hide their traumas and also the consequences of just getting by, right? So it is my earnest prayer that when we understand more about and shed more light on the hidden experience of functioning with unresolved trauma, that we can validate the experience, or my voice, my experience can help validate the experiences of trauma and help you to, or inspire you to consider a pathway to trauma recovery, right? Talk about pathway to trauma recovery in our book here, Pathway to Trauma Recovery, Transform Your Pain into Power, right? Overcoming the mystery of how trauma really affects us, right? You have the opportunity to meet some phenomenal authors all across the world, right? Get to meet them, hear their trauma recovery journey, and what did they use to help them push past the trauma, overcome it. Now, I did not say swallow it and keep it in. I said push past it, go overcome it, right? And that's what we want to do. We want to overcome it. So let's talk a little bit about, or dig down into, what is the impact of suffering in silence? What happens, right? If there's an emotional toll, a physical toll, a cognitive toll, and also a toll on our relationships. Let's talk about, what does it look like when we bury our trauma? It can lead to feelings of loneliness, of shame, a sense of being broken and unfixable. That part right there, being broken and unfixable. I remember Denzel Washington in Flight. He said that he was, if you haven't seen it, y'all, go and see it. It's an amazing, amazing movie. So many lessons in that movie. But he talked about being put in a broken plane. And I suggest that when we've encountered trauma, such as myself, I encountered trauma from inception, right? Because I was a product of domestic violence, and my mom was suffering domestic violence while I was being formed and crafted. So it's like being put in a broken brain, right? because your brain doesn't have the opportunity to come together properly. So whether it's your story, whether the trauma happened then or whether it happened down the line, like mine was complex PTSD, trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma, right? And so therefore it developed into complex PTSD. So I was saying, what is that impact of silent suffering? Let's go back again, wait, to the emotional toll. Forgot my point there, but the emotional toll. So when Denzel Washington talked about being put in a broken plane, he flipped it upside down and he drove that plane upside down and landed those folks safely. And that's what we have to do when we've been placed into a broken brain, if you will, right? Air quotes, y'all. When you've been placed in that situation or trauma has happened to you, right? It's up to us. And that's why I say trauma is not your fault. However, recovery is your responsibility because the trauma wasn't your fault. The broken brain, the broken plane wasn't your fault. But flipping that over and overcoming it now is your responsibility because there are tools, modalities, coaching. You know, we've come up with a plethora and created a plethora of resources that can help you overcome your trauma, right? And first of all, it's becoming aware of it. And that's what this 3-part series is about. What does it look like functioning traumatized, right? If we stop, grab a pen and a piece of paper and take down some notes, you don't want to miss this, right? Either yourself or somebody that you know have suffered trauma and we can be a help to them. So let's talk about what is the emotional toll when you bury the trauma. Again, it can lead to loneliness, shame, a sense of brokenness or unfixability, right? But it can be fixed. We must do the work, right? Is it easy work? No. This is a clean show, so I'm not going to cuss, but it is not easy work but it's doable. I'm living proof that it is doable, right? Okay. The physical toll, long-term stress, these responses on the body can lead to health issues, a weakened immune system, and physical pain, right? Also, when you've gone through trauma and it's unresolved and it's buried, oftentimes, like in my instance, you know, I talk about referring to my notes because it does affect your brain and your ability to concentrate, your ability to focus. So you would need aids to help you. And oftentimes, which we're going to get off into that in our part 3, because this is a 3-part series. We're going to talk about the pathway to recovery. How do we get off that cycle of silent suffering? How do we become empowered through the knowledge and through connections? Okay, but that's in part number 3. So you'll have to come back to hear part 3. So let's continue talking about the physical. There's some physical responses on the body, which again it leads to health issues, weakened immune systems, and physical pain. And I've suffered all of it through the gamut of it. I felt it, how trauma does affect us in our body, right? But we can recover. And that is the light at the end of the tunnel, right? It can take a cognitive toll on us. I talked about that, about reduced concentration, memory issues, difficulty in making decisions. Bing, bing, bing. I've experienced it all, but we can overcome it and we can recover. Relationships, how trauma can strain relationships, leading to misunderstanding and emotional distance. Yes, you are. Yes, we again, having positive people around you and educating them. You can't fault somebody for not understanding what your experience is. Now, you can't educate them, but guess what? In order to educate them, we must be educated ourselves. We must know that if just because we've had, you know, I said life wasn't working out, right? The decisions I was making they weren't smart. They weren't decisions that was going to propel me into being the purposeful person, the intentional woman that I am today, and that I've always known that I could be. My decisions weren't getting me there because they were clouded. They were clouded by trauma, right? Why do people hide their trauma? Wow, the biggest thing is fear of judgment, right? Appearing weak if we open up about our struggles. And again, we said 70 to 80% of the population, but here we are, we're hiding it and we're keeping it in. When I first started talking about my trauma experience, I was told, keep that at home, keep that in the closet. Why are you airing your dirty laundry? Why are you talking about your stuff? And I say, if you don't talk about it, you will get sick, right? Yes, that happened to me. I was in a situation where I was so full of depression that I could not even swallow. It was hard to swallow liquid, y'all. It's real. It'll grab you before you know it. So you must continuously, consciously work on it. The stigma around mental health, especially in professional and cultural settings, right? There is a stigma against it. So we try to hold it and try to hide it, right? But I say, get into a safe place, because a part of all of this is we don't feel safe, right? And we yearn for that safety, right? We yearn for for women, and I've talked to many and I've experienced it myself. We yearn for a place to snuggle and just breathe, just exhale, right? And I say for women because we look for a man's strong arms, right? And I guess for men, they're looking for a soft place to land, right? And that maybe a woman's arms. But we don't want to make, when we talk about those relationships, we don't want to make bad decisions in relationships or decisions of someone that is not compatible to us just because we need that safe space, right? We're going to talk about relationships, right? A belief that time will heal. Listen. Trauma is progressive. So time is that's not what's going to heal it. It's your intentional efforts to create a safe space, your intentional efforts to create a self-care plan and sticking to that plan. I don't want to get up every morning to exercise, y'all, but I do. I get up, I exercise. I do what's necessary in order for me to stay in recovery and not relapse. This is a lifetime commitment, okay? Your past experiences of not being believed or validated when you try to open up, right? So let me talk about a situation that's funny now, but it wasn't funny then. When I was a young girl, I was teased about being overweight. And it hurt me, but I would do the smiling faces thing. If you don't know what the smiling faces is, go back and listen to the smiling faces episode. But I would cry, but I would smile. So my smile, they called me smiling faces because tears would stream down my face and I would still smile. So I wanted to do like all the other girls, and I wanted to put on this t-shirt, y'all, and some jeans and put the belt on. Y'all that's born in the 60s, y'all know what I'm talking about. That was a cute look, right? Put on a little a wife beater, if you will, and a white beater and some jeans, right? Put them in the dryer so they're super tight. Put the belt on, and hey, that was a look with some real crispy white gym shoes. So I said, ooh, I'm going to get out of these sweaters because I had a thing about my arms being big. I was a healthy young woman, right? Growing up, I was always, and we'll talk about some other issues that pushed me into that. But anyhow, I struggled with my weight and I was teased and taunted about that. And so I said, I'm going to take this sweater off. I'm tired of being hot in the wintertime, in the summertime, rather. I'm tired of being hot with the sweater on. I took it off. I shrunk my jeans, put my wife beater on, white crisp shirt, white t-shirt, put my belt on, came downstairs. And the first thing my dad said, he said, oh my God, I didn't know your arms were that big. Well, guess what? Because nobody had seen my arms. But what I learned as I got older, if your arms are a certain size in a sweater, they're the same size outside the sweater. You are not hiding anything. But that is the trying to open up and come out, and somebody says something and you run right back. But we can't do that. Self-talk is so important. It has to be a key part of our self-care plan. What do we tell ourselves? Okay. And our last for this part two, the consequences of just getting by. Unresolved trauma can compound and resurface in unexpected ways, right? And that is huge. We're talking about you can't bury it. We think that, okay, it's going to go away if I ignore it, or it'll go away on its own, or time is going to heal it, time is going to recover it. That is not how trauma works. Okay. And it'll come out in unexpected ways like panic attacks, depression episodes, or interpersonal conflict. where you're conflicting with yourself, right? But the depressive episodes, they can hit you at any time. Certain things can trigger it. Just, and you don't know what or when it's going to happen. So it's important that we stay on the self-care plan and that we stay around people that are aware, that can read your face, right? I am not a poker face girl. My stuff show up on my face. What's on the inside is going to show up on the outside. And the people that love you and care about you and are around you, they will be able to identify it. But it's good to have good people around you so that people won't take advantage of you when you're in that weakened state. Okay. So again, those are the consequences. Snap moments, right? Snap moments. I was getting ready to say snap back because people say snap out of it, snap back. And those are words that people don't understand that actually trigger you further into it. It because you want to snap out of it, but it's not something you can turn on and off like a light switch, right? That's why it's important to embrace your higher power. My higher power is God. Your higher power is your higher power, but to know that there is somebody bigger than you and I, right? To have the power to help you work through it. Part of the self-care plan, right? Snap moments are moments that you have suppressed the emotions and they erupt. They often cause damage in relationships and in your self-image, because if you snap and you cuss somebody out and that's not your normal, right? That will do some damage to your self-esteem, right? It also reduces your quality of life. You're moving through life on autopilot without experiencing true joy or fulfillment. And I tell you, I was so happy to be able to exhale, but I knew that that was only a part of the journey. When I exhaled, right? When I started to get better, when I started to feel better, when I hear some of my people and some of my coaching clients, they go through that experience and it's like a bright light bulb comes on and then it starts to feel better. But I always caution my coaching clients or even my group coaching clients, I always encourage you and help you to understand that this is not a one and done. This is a lifestyle change, right? And it will get better if you do the work, right? You'll wake up one day and you'll feel better. You'll be able to breathe again. The kaleidoscope that we talk about, that kaleidoscope the picture will start to straighten up and you'll be able to breathe again. All righty. I hope this episode has helped you. Stay tuned for part 3. In part 3, we're going to talk about the pathways to recover and get off of that cycle of silent suffering. And we're going to talk about empowerment through acknowledgement and connection. It is our earnest desire that you will hear something that's going to help you to move forward in your pathway to trauma recovery, and you uncover some of this unresolved trauma. Up and out, people, up and out. All righty. Remember, trauma is not your fault. However, recovery, that is your responsibility. I'll see you in part 3. Bye for now. It's time to buckle up. No more suffering in silence. Our Power Pack journey to recovery and realignment starts now. Remember, you were collateral damage on someone else's warpath. Trauma is not your fault. Recovery, however, is your responsibility. I'm your host, Wellness Coach Liz Blanding, and this is the Get Trauma Informed podcast.